WCLN 1170 Radio and Star Communications Channel 16 proudly present the We Should Know Show, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative. Now, here's your host, J.W. Simmons, as we consider closely what we should know.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We Should Know's on there. My name is J.W. Simmons. I'm your host. Our guest today is Joel Rose, the director, curator of the Sampson County History Museum. Joel, you've got many other titles related to history. You have a passion for history. I want to open the show today and kind of an intriguing thought of what we're going to be talking about first. The idea of finding a house or a cabin inside a house in Sampson County, resulting in information that it's a historical piece, and discovering that that cabin now sits on the property that you direct down there, the History Museum property, and plus part of that history is going to be highlighted in March in an event with the Daughters of the American Revolution. Mm-hmm. Now, I've just set the stage for you to explain what the heck I'm talking about.
Okay.
So I'm just going to let you start with that.
What we have is a cabin, the Thomas Bunting Cabin. And, well, let me back up a little more. About 25 years ago, when the Timberlake development was being done, they were going to put in a golf course, which they did. And, but there was an old house on the property. And, it was right where they wanted to put the golf course. And the house had been vandalized, had not been lived in 50 years. It was an old house. So they decided to tear it down and just haul it away. But as they were dismantling it, they discovered, boom, there was a log cabin on the inside.
You didn't know that by looking at it?
No, you couldn't tell. And so they continued to dismantle the house and, but they had the complete cabin. And so they called Davy King, who was the head of the museum at the time, and offered it to him. And of course he accepted. And there were some volunteers, and the cabin was moved to our location. And some volunteers helped with funding that was able to put on a new roof and rehabilitate it a bit. But it was belonged, I think, to David Bunting, who married one of Richard Clinton's daughters, originally. And he had several children, including the youngest one was Dr. Thomas Bunting. He was the last one to live there.
And Richard Clinton, of course, is the name of Clinton, North Carolina,
which is the town. Yeah. And, he was a colonel in the Revolution, in the militia. His brother-in-law was, James Keenan. And, his home was about where the Methodist Church is here today.
What year range are we talking about that was an active cabin and that was
we're talking going back into the Revolutionary War era.
1700s. Okay?
Yeah, and I don't know. I think that obviously Thomas Bunting inherited. They were a wealthy family. They were large landowners, slave owners, and that's where he lived, and he practiced. He was a doctor, and he wound up, I don't know, I'm thinking the census from 1950, he owned about 50 enslaved people. He married his first cousin, was just, I think, normal for those times. And she, too, was a granddaughter of Richard Clinton's. And they had 3 children, but the mother died in 1845. Okay. So here he was, 3 children, but he had help, looking after the kids. But I guess eventually he got lonely or whatever, but, he developed a relationship with one of his slaves. Her name was Mary Ann. And with Mary Ann, he fathered 6 or 7 children. Okay.
Now, this was like one of the first recollections here. I'm hearing of biracial marriage back during that, which was just not noticed that much.
No. I don't know that they ever married per se, but from what I understand, he looked after them as his own, and the children that were born free. This is before emancipation.
Yeah.
And they were well dressed, well schooled, well educated. And he died in 1872 or thereabouts. But before he did, it's my understanding that he bought them a house that's still on McCoy Street, and that's where they moved. And it's really interesting story how it unfolds there.
So again, as you tell this story, you look at it and this area, when I say the area, this Sampson, Duplin, Bladen, surrounding counties here has always been kind of a historical marker for the country.
You know, I get a lot of inquiries at the museum, people looking for family history or looking for information on a particular individual, and for whatever, for genealogy, for DAR, SAR research. And, but it's almost like, you know, they might be calling from California or, you know, Michigan or Nebraska, but it's like it all started back on the East Coast.
Yeah.
You know, and we're just, our ancestors who sat on this area were primarily coming out of Virginia, coming down through the Jamestown area down south. Then we had Scotch Irish. Scotch Irish came in that direction too. But from the south, you had Highland Scots came up the Cape Fear and Black River. And then you had Irish come up. But so you had kind of a mix, but you get a better understanding these were all immigrants. And it's kind of like this started on the East Coast and worked its way west. Let's pick up
because I want to make sure we get this in. Is this idea that the Bunting family, this legacy continues to live. There's folks that's there.
Yeah.
Now the Daughters of the American Revolution, which you and I talked about off camera, this group has been around for,
I'm not sure
as long as I can remember. I mean, they've been there, but they're going to do an induction sometime in March with one of those family members right here in Clinton of the Bunting family.
Let me tell you about that story. It's really interesting. Last May, we had a visitor at the museum, a young lady by the name of Kim Crawford, and Kim is from Baltimore, but she now lives in Zebulon and works in that area. And she came to Clinton to visit the Bunting Museum. And as she explained to me, she was one of those Bunting descendants. Okay. And it was like, it was on her bucket list to make sure she came down to visit the Bunting Cabin. Okay. But, she pursued it, and she inquired about what's the possibility of her joining the Daughters in the American Revolution. And so I put her in contact with some local people, local DAR officials, and she's gone through the process, and she is going to be inducted into the DAR next month here in Clinton. And it's just really a fascinating story.
So this organization, the Daughters of American Revolution, there's certain credentialing that is necessary to tie to the historical process of the revolution as it relates to the family, correct?
Well,
so is that one of the things they were?
You have to be able to prove that one of your ancestors served.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And, you know, that could be, lineage could be a difficulty for some blacks when they're trying to find records.
Sure.
Going back before 1900.
Yeah.
Okay. Some of those records were incomplete. Some of started having people move. So, but she worked with some of the DAR officials locally who really did their best to help her and were quite accepting. And so, I mean, it's a good thing. You know,
is Daughters of American Revolution, is that a national recognized?
Sure, and it's I'm not sure when it was started. I probably should have checked before I got here, but again, you have to be able to prove lineage, and it's probably been around 150 years, as I'm willing to guess at least. I know there's a similar organization for the men called the Sons of the American Revolution. And it too has the same criteria.
That particular thought opens the thread in our conversation here of the importance of knowing that, because that itself brought this country together. I mean, there was people say today there's a lot to fight for, but they were very much fighting just for their existence. So how do you look at it from a historian perspective? We got about 2 minutes here. We're going to get a break, but how do you look at it from a historian perspective and say to folks, listen, we've not only faced turbulent times, but it's been turbulent times over and over again.
Well, times have changed. Okay. And you and I have witnessed a lot.
Oh, yeah.
As we were discussing earlier. And so it's a real world, and things are different. And, I think this is a great opportunity for Kim Crawford and for our community. And, so I'm looking forward to it next month.
Well, I think one of the things I'd like to do when we come back from break is not only follow up on this, but kind of get you to give us a picture if they're from this same family, from this same Bunting family. Is there still other legacy people out there that's part of that family that maybe is living in this area now, or that will connect, or that have connected with you? And we look at his role and Richard Clinton's role, not only in our identity as a society, but our direction. And I think that would be kind of interesting to folks to say, well, here's some other connecting pieces here. Because if it just been one of those things that somebody said, no, I'm not interested in that cabin, that story might not have been told. And those stories are critical. And you've been a part of that process of those stories for years. So let's kind of look at that when we come back from this break. And then I want to kind of thread off into some other historical, should I say, moments as we move forward.
Okay. All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for being with us today and remind you that each and every week we're at 2:30, and that's on Star Communications TV and also simulcast on WCLN Radio. We'll be back in just a moment. Call a friend and stay tuned. We're talking about history that may have set the very precedent for where you are now.
Just because something may work doesn't mean it's right for your business. Let Star Communications' knowledgeable consultants help you customize a hosted voice system that's right for you. Our dedicated experts work with you to understand your business needs and guide you at every step, from choosing and installing services to ongoing maintenance and support. Contact Star today.
Eastern North Carolina is a beautiful place where we gladly choose to call home. And we strive to provide the best communications services. STAR is committed to improving communications to all our service areas, because we want to improve the communities where we not only work, but also live. STAR Communications. We are neighbors serving neighbors.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. J.W. Simmons here. The name of the show is We Should Know. We're talking with Joel Rose, director of the museum, the historical site right here in Clinton, a physical site that a lot of people visit. Joel, when we went to break, we were talking about the whole Bunting house, or it's a building, a cabin, if you will, that's located on that property. We were talking about the Daughters of American Revolution, and as we were on break, we discovered that that organization, those folks that come together, started way back in 1890. So this is, the organization itself is historical. The association is inducting a lady by the name of Kim Crawford.
That's right.
She is part of the lineage of the Dr. Bunting family, who has been associated with not only major events, but other people by the name of Richard Clinton, i.e. Clinton, North Carolina. So let's pick it up from there. and kind of look at this perspective of what that specifically means for us, and the event that's coming up in March. And we're going to post the date. We'll put it on so people can look at it and remember it. But the date is coming up. Is that open to the general public?
I don't know if it would. I mean, I don't see any reason why the public can't attend at all. And but I haven't discussed it anymore with Penny Lockerman, who is responsible for that program. Sure. She's the local DAR representative. But I'll find out more.
I think that would be important for folks to understand. So it may be that they have some information they could bring forward that would be beneficial in this journey and understanding of what was happening there.
Well, too, there are a lot of people in this county community, a lot of women and men that can trace their ancestry to men who served in the Revolution. Mm-hmm. Most of them from this area. Most of them were in the militia and some in the Continental Army. But, and I think most folks in Sampson County are related anyway. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're all cousins.
Absolutely.
But, it's easy to find some. And if you're ever searching for, ancestors like that, we can help down there.
And I think you've mentioned too that at the museum that oftentimes you have folks that come in that are looking for specific things about history, some of it their personal history, but also just looking at their relationship to somebody that either did live here and maybe they've never been here.
Yeah. I got an inquiry last year from a gentleman whose last name was Petty, Petty, whose father owned the original electrical plant that opened in Clinton in 1910 or wherever. So, we get a number of folks that are coming through who have ties to this community one way or another.
You've got a number of cabins. I want to touch on this so I won't forget to do this. But you've got a number of, I call them venues that's located down there. If you look at those venues, which one has the date of the longest? Say, as far as the Bunting Cabin, is there something before that's on that property, or is that the oldest?
I mean, older and chronologically?
Yeah.
I'm not sure now. The Bunting Cabin supposedly dates to about 1750. Mm-hmm. Okay. But there's another cabin which also dates to about 1750, and it's what was known as the Claude Moore Cabin Museum. Mm-hmm. And you might have heard of Cabin Museum Road around Turkey, but that was right off of Claude Moore's farm. Mm-hmm. And that's where he kept his cabin museum. And the cabin museum was simply an old log cabin that he found, I think it was on Beasley property close to Magnolia, maybe had a mill of some sort. Mm-hmm. And he moved to his property. And Claude Moore he's been deceased 25 years, but he was a real historian of that has taught and recorded so much Sampson County history that, and later he taught at Mount Olive College, taught history. He was a principal at some of the area high schools in Lake Union. Mm-hmm. He was a teacher, but he wrote a lot, and people gave him. They knew he was interested, so locals gave him artifacts. So he collected his artifacts and he put them in his museum. So much of his museum today is just like it was when he brought it to us, or he left it to us 20 years ago. So.
But the thing is, the point here is that cabin is sitting on this property inside the city limits of Clinton.
Oh, yeah.
And it's accessible. If folks want to come by, did they call first to make sure everything's open?
They can do that. But, as a rule, we were open Thursday through Saturday from 10 to 4. But if someone needs help or has an odd time, or like if a couple of weeks ago I had a couple who were bringing friends down from out of state, and they weren't going to be staying long. So, we met them there on a Tuesday afternoon and took them on a tour. But besides the Bunting Cabin and the Cullen-Moore Cabin Museum, there's also the Holmes House, which was part of the gift that came from the Cullen-Moore family. And the Holmes House was one small building that was used as both a kitchen and a dining room by a family, maybe on a plantation. And it was built before the Civil War. And there are some interesting artifacts in there. We have what we call our farm museum, which is a Grange museum, which we was built with the assistance of the North Carolina Grange. We have a lot of old farm implements there. We have what we call our exhibit hall, where we display certain timely items that has a variety of interest there. We have the Sampson County Sports Hall of Fame building, which the Sampson County Sports Club is the one that funded it and we got had the building of it done, and we just kind of look after it for them. It contains a lot of information about Sampson County, past Sampson County athletes and schools. We also have the 1941 Roseboro fire truck, which had been restored, and it's a magnificent piece, and it's beautiful, and we've got it in a separate building. We have the Law Enforcement Museum. As you may remember, David King, one of the founders, was retired policeman and highway patrolman. Yeah, and right. So it was one of those things close to his heart to have a law enforcement museum. And so we've got representation from the North Carolina Highway Patrol, from the Clinton Police Department, history with the Sheriff's Department, and we've even got a jail cell from the old Sampson County Jail that was on Vance Street, and that was torn down about 15 years ago.
As you're talking, there's two things that strikes me, Joe, is that I can sit here and look at you and we could say, well, some of these things we remember in our history, or maybe we were even part of, and I call that near history. And then you got the further history, which is maybe part of that back to 1800, that kind of thing. So there literally is a collective of all of that that can be physically seen, touched, looked at, get a sense of how we're here. As we continue this conversation, I want folks to understand we're going to kind of start segueing into that idea of why it's important to me or why it's important to you. It should be important to everybody to look at that. So when you think about presenting the museum as the director, do you have as many local people as you do folks traveling, coming, or is it a balance of both?
Well, it's probably a pretty good mix of both. And we get folks from all in the county that are coming to visit, whether it's Roseboro or maybe we'll find somebody coming from Warsaw or facing that area. We do get the travelers. We do have the day trippers, and we get good reviews from that. But it's really surprising the folks that come through. Now, I do want to mention we were talking about the what we have to offer there, and some of the buildings. And one of them is the latest building that we added was about 4 years ago, and that's our military museum. And you've been in it, and it's chock full of artifacts. But we believe it's really a first class facility, and we brought in people from the state museums and looked at it, and we were real proud of that. Our main building is the one that you see out front. And sometimes it's misleading because I've had people who come in, knock on the door, and we let in, and I show them we have 10 more buildings in the back, and they said, I thought it was just this building. It's misleading. Now, let me tell you what else we're doing. We are in the process of renovating a house 2 doors down, okay, where we are going to move when it's completed, and this will be what we call our welcome center. And this is going to be the face of the museum. And this is going to be our entrance. And we're really excited about that. We've been given certain grants from the state in the last year or 2 years, and renovations are going on right now. And so I'm not sure when we'll finally get in, but it's going to be really exciting for us. It'll be a real asset for our museum and for the community.
Well, it sounds like not only is the museum growing, but the interest in the museum is growing. When we come back, I want to get into some of those specific things that relate to history and why it's not only important to both you and I, but people that are much younger, why it's important to them as well, because it marks our path of where we may be going if we look back at where we've been. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. We're talking about history. We're talking with Joel Rose about the museum, about things happening now that you can be part of. Well, stay tuned. We'll be right back.
For the ultimate Wi-Fi experience, you need whole home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Star's whole home Wi-Fi provides ultimate coverage, ultimate performance, and ultimate power all the time. Star's whole home Wi-Fi systems feature the latest Wi-Fi 6 technology and are equipped with unrivaled bandwidth and 4 times more simultaneous connections. So you can connect tons of devices throughout your home with no lag and no downtime. Plus, with 24/7 support and remote troubleshooting, you can rest assured that Star is always there to help you should any issues arise. Star's whole home Wi-Fi also comes with the Command IQ mobile app, putting you in control of your home network and making it easy to set up and connect devices, run network speed tests, pause Wi-Fi, and set parental controls all from the palm of your hand. It's the ultimate Wi-Fi experience. Contact Star today to get started.
Let's get out of here.
Protect what matters most in your life with security from Star Communications.
Sign up for security monitoring during the month of February and receive basic installation free.
When it comes to new, liquidated, and overstocked merchandise at unbeatable prices, look no further than J&B Liquidations. Shop our warehouse for discounts 40 to 90% off home goods, furniture, pet, baby, toys, tools, and more. The warehouse is stocked daily, and our staff is here and ready to help. Open to the public Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. until 6 p.m.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Our guest today is Joel Rose. The name of the show is We Should Know, and my name is J.W. Simmons, your host. Joel, we've just, it seems like when I get into conversations with you, I need more than an hour or so, but we're into the third segment of the show. We're talking about a lot of issues that build itself around that property, and you were explaining that there's another building that's going to be opened up hopefully soon that will be somewhat of the face of the museum, which then adds more ability to have other things happening on the property at the museum, or is the museum pretty much loaded now?
Well, we're certainly loaded, but we can't ever turn away anything, that would be of interest. To do a good full tour runs about an hour now. Okay. Yeah.
And that's not getting into a lot of detail.
Yeah. We've just got a lot to share. And sometimes folks will join us and have to run and say, well, I just had no idea you had all this. We want to come back and, look at it again or visit again. So that happens a lot.
Something occurred to me, and you probably could apply this question to anything down there, but it struck me is that you mentioned the Law Enforcement Museum in David King. Okay, and that's, I've been there and seen that, but it struck me that we do basic law enforcement training here at the community college. The North Carolina Justice Academy is in Sampson County it's one of 2 in the state. We're in the eastern part. Mm-hmm. is that something, and I just asked this as an observation because, I don't have any scientific, I hadn't looked at the curriculum, but would that not be something that would be of interest or should be of interest of people that are training new law enforcement officers to literally tour that facility to see the history behind the profession that they're about to step into? Is that, maybe we're making a proposal here.
That's not a bad idea. And we can certainly invite those folks.
Yeah.
And we're always trying to improve and enhance the displays that we have, whether it's the sheriff's department, or the Clinton Police Department.
Sure.
Really interesting stuff when you delve back into its history and some of its past members.
Absolutely. And the way things were done then versus now, or the expectation of these professionals as they go out in doing their job, has changed so dramatically. I think David King would be, I'd love to sit down and maybe sometime in the future I can sit down with David, but just looking at it from that perspective, the changes and how and why those changes came about. And there are those people that say there's a greater expectation than the ability to do some of the things that folks want now because we're dealing with this social psychological thing. But I want to continue that thought.
Well, let me mention this to you too, JW. One thing that's interesting, we have, as I mentioned, we have a jail cell from the old Sampson County Jail that was located on Vance Street. Mm-hmm. And of course, that facility was sorely outdated and had become way too small for, the inmate population. They were having to put, as I understand it, 5 and 6 people in a cell sometimes.
Oh yeah, it was hard.
Which was meant for at best. And, but there's a photo of the, sheriff and 4 deputies in the 1960s. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if that's all the deputies he had, but with 4 deputies, you can only arrest so many people. And Sampson County is the largest county in the state and was then too. Mm-hmm. So, and now I'm not sure how many deputies they have. I know they're a lot and they're needed and they do a good job. Sure. But, with the number of deputies we have today, they arrest a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And so the jail it quickly got too small.
Just over capacity.
And so now we have a nice, facility out toward Dairy Queen out that way on Fontana Street. And I think it's great, but it's you can see the difference between 4 deputies and the number they have today.
Yeah, and in that period also, I recall that there were, personal knowledge on this is there were a number of folks that were called constables. And they looked after their communities. Yeah. They were volunteers.
That's right.
And they got called on something called landline phones, of which people don't even know what they are now. Yeah. And they would go out into the community when a neighbor had a problem. So there was more volunteerism, whereas now it's led to a profession of highly credentialed individuals when they go out. So I want to kind of step back even one moment very quickly. I look at the 3 people in my mind now, and from the Turlington to the King to Joel Rose, and just ask you a question. How did Joel Rose get this interest, and when did this interest in history strike you to step up and do what you're doing at the museum? You're also head up the Sampson County Historical Society. You've been involved at Moores Creek. Where does that passion come from for Joel Rose?
Well, I enjoy history and always have, and I grew up in Clinton, and my family was from Sampson County and from the Newton Grove area. Mm-hmm. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, if you're, everybody in Sampson County is related. Mm-hmm. So I already knew a lot of the family connections, who we were, and, like who the Roses or the Warrens or the McPhails or the Herrings or, I knew who these families were and where they kind of connected and fit in within the county. Mm-hmm. And of course, as a kid, I was cowboy, Civil War buff, but you see these events like the movies of Revolutionary War, Civil War, or whatever, and you think, wow, why didn't something like that happen around here? But it did. You know, it's really interesting that, you know, that to know that that redcoats were in what's now Sampson County, pursuing the militia leaders, trying to chase them down and capture them. You know, there was a lot of skirmishes that took place in Sampson County, what was then Duplin County, but between what we call militia or patriots and loyalists. Okay, so who didn't want to break off from the king. So you've got kind of a background there, and
that had to be intriguing for you.
Oh yeah, well, you just kind of fill in the blanks, and you know people, and of course, when you get to our ages, you know more people than you did, and so you're able to put these things together. But looking at, I will tell you that one of my friends or mentors from years ago was a fellow by the name of Oscar Bizzle.
Yes,
and Oscar compiled this Sampson County Heritage book back in like 1983. It's a great book that gives all kinds of Sampson County history, and it's very in depth. And they have a lot of contributions from Claude Moore, who was very prolific in writing events and stories about what took place in Sampson County. And so you know you've got some of that. And Oscar invited me to come to his Sampson County Historical Society meetings, and it was interesting. And then at one point, I was got to be I was asked to find the speakers for the event. Now it was 15 years ago, so I've been doing that. But it's just kind of simply all comes together, and it does for you too, just in the same sort of way. When you know these things, you know people.
Well, I think what we're really saying here, what I'm feeling from you and what I kind of sense as well, is that if we don't understand those pillars that are actually making what we are today, then we have to reflect and make sure that it's not, that foundation is not crumbling, because there's a lot of work that's been put in to allowing us to be, quote, the most powerful country in the world. And it didn't just happen, but there's so many things that are just boundlessly hitting that foundation. And that's kind of the thing that strikes me as important, is that sometimes just stop and look back. And as you pointed out, some of these things we've crossed and these paths we've crossed. So, you know, is that part of what is driving you as well? Well,
too, I just, I enjoy history, and I know that, you know, I've chosen to live and remain in Clinton for the rest of my life, and like you and other locals, you know, we're not a Raleigh, okay, we're not a Cary, and that's fine. We are who we are. But what we want to do is make this as good a place to live for the people that are here as possible. You know, I mean, why shouldn't we offer this to our citizens? Why shouldn't we offer that to our students? You know, so we want to make it the best place, but also there's been some changes going on the last 20, 30 years. Demographics, you know, our community, our Clinton community has gotten a little smaller. We've seen a lot of good folks leaving, and we see typically students now are leave and go to school and move away in search of work. But we're located, we've kind of like been in a desert between Raleigh and Wilmington. But Wilmington's the fastest growing community in the country right now. And Raleigh-Durham is considered one of the most fastest growing. And so eventually these two are going to we're right in between.
And
so it's going to fill in.
That's coming fast.
Yeah.
I think we're feeling that.
We're just working to
We're going to take a break. We'll be back in a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned.
Providing fewer commutes, more backyard offices, and crystal clear meetings. Providing less, you froze up, and more presence in your presentations. Providing a better internet experience. Providing possible.
After completing my contract, I still have to buy out of it? Come on. Here's your sign.
Switch to the sign that's keeping homes secure and customers happy all over the area. Security from Star Communications. Sign up for security monitoring during the month of February and receive basic installation free.
Somebody try to break into this place?
Security from Star Communications.
Most aging adults want to stay in their homes as long as possible. And as your loved ones get older, you want to support them, even when you can't be there. Star is proud to offer Star Alert. This new system is now mobile and has GPS compatibility, so your loved ones can live their lives and you can have peace of mind, knowing they can get the help they need with just the simple push of a button. The new Star Alert also offers automatic fall detection, so help will be alerted even if they can't press the button. Call and ask about Star Alert today.
Welcome back, folks. We Should Know is on there. My name is J.W. Simmons, your host. We've been talking with Joel Rose, the director of the museum here in Clinton. And Joel, you're also, as we mentioned, the Historical Society. You head up that project, and that's I've met some wonderful people. Now, you talk about passion. If you haven't attended an Historical Society meeting, get there early and just chat with people as they're coming in and look at the notes they have. Not only do they come prepared, but they come to give. And I just want to thank you for doing that and taking this part of your life to dedicate to enriching people's understanding of the history and how they got here. So as we get in, and we never have enough time when you and I are talking, but when we get into this last segment, in some of the reading I've done, I've run on several quotes, and this is coming from the National History group, and I will post this website on our if folks want to look it up and read some of this. But in chapter 2 of a series, it talked a lot about not only the importance of history, but one of those statements was history can help to develop loyal, intelligent, cooperative, well-rounded, and well-balanced American citizens. Now, that sentence is part of a message that if we basically, I'm going to put it pretty blunt here, is that if we keep doing the same wrong things over and over again, not only is that a sign of a mental problem, but history teaches us, if we look back, there's certain places we don't need to keep going. I mean, I think everybody would agree in our conversation, we don't want another Civil War. We don't want states to disconnect. We don't want all these things. Help me in the sense of trying to understand more how critical history is. It's not just dead news.
Well, I think one thing that we can offer visitors is those that come in or really have an interest, those that are also looking for answers in a certain sort of way. And when they come to our museum and see what we have, but it gives them an opportunity to pause and reflect at what was, and as well as mistakes and what could be. But it's I think it's part of the process of people looking for who they are and what we are and who we are, and looking at the news today and asking those questions and saying, well, how does all this fit into where we were and where we want to go?
Well, and even, we talked a bit about this far history, which we're talking about the Daughters of the American Revolution and those kinds of things, which back in the 1700s. And we also have talked about near history. Now, you and I can sit here and talk about things in 50s, 60s, and 70s, and that's near history. But there's a lot of people listening that it can go a little bit further back, thank God, and say, well, hey, let's talk about the early 50s maybe, and even maybe in the 40s. Clinton, North Carolina has been somewhat the geographical focal point for a lot of activities. If you look at about a 40, 50 mile radius of a lot of things that's happened. How does that land with you as a historian? How do you look at them and say, you can come here and we'll tell you how you got there? Does that make sense?
We could try, but I think that Clinton has been fairly isolated it's always been isolated to a certain degree. It was never on a major interstate. Mm-hmm. It was never on a river port. It was never on a primary road going. And if you came to Clinton, you were coming to Clinton for a reason.
Right.
It's not like you were on your way to so-and-so and it went through Clinton. So it was always off the beaten path a little bit, unlike places like, Raleigh or Tarboro or places that are or Fayetteville, which is on the river, and so it was always off the beaten path, and so as a result, we just haven't seen the growth. Well, we're like a lot in Eastern North Carolina, okay, and but we just haven't experienced the growth that the other areas of the state have in other areas of the country. But it's not an unusual problem. It's not a problem, but it's a challenge. Okay. And, we all want to lead and have better lives and better jobs and that sort of thing. So it's, it's gradual, but, working hard to get it back and get on the right path. And I'm just really kind of excited about it.
One of the things that I've heard you talk about before as well, and I'll toss Elizabethtown in here. There were some strategic historical battles that occurred in Elizabethtown and in that area, and that those folks in that area are part of our viewing and listening audience.
Yeah. That's really an interesting story about the Battle of Elizabethtown, because that took place, I think it was August of 1781. 1781 was a year when everything happened in the Revolution, okay? Particularly in this area. I mean, you had Moore's Creek battle in 1776, which was mainly loyalists versus the patriots and militia. But there was not much activity over the next 5 years, until 1781. All the activity was taking place up north, like Massachusetts and Pennsylvania and New York State, places like that. But 1781 is when the British occupied Wilmington, and they were there to resupply Lord Cornwallis when he came through. He was coming in through South Carolina, and then worked his way up through Kings Mountain, then up to Battle of Guilford Courthouse, and then where they fought, and he was credited with an empty victory, but he made his way down to Wilmington to get resupplied. But there were about maybe 1,500 redcoats down there in Wilmington at the time, and they would make forays into the interior of the country, including what's now, Sampson County, searching for rebel leaders. Okay. But in Elizabethtown and Bladen County was a solidly loyalist group. Okay. But,
now, when we use the word loyalist, we're talking loyal to the king.
Yeah. A lot of people call them Tories.
Yeah.
Okay? But, and they had taken over the town, and they were there to resupply Cornwallis. Well, wait a minute, he'd already come through then. But it was an event where they were holding some patriot prisoners. This is what what's now downtown Elizabethtown. Wow. And then early one morning, before light, a group of about 69 militia started charging into the town, and made it sound like they were a lot more of them than there were. They fooled the loyalists, and there were probably 300 some loyalists there. and they were afraid they were being overrun by this patriot militia. And so they fled. Okay. So, and they more or less drove the Tories, the loyalists, out of Elizabethtown. And so it was no longer an issue, but, and they captured a lot of these, loyalists who had fled down on the river. And it's a place called Tory Hole. You may have seen that there in Elizabethtown on the right after you pass the bridge. But, it's an interesting story. Yeah.
But those people, a lot of the people living in that area, from what I've heard you mention, is that most likely there's a lot of descendants from some of those folks that actually fought in that battle.
Well, JW, there are a lot of descendants, folks who fought in those battles, in Sampson County. I mean, we could probably, look at your line and when you go back, 7 generations, you could probably have, 32 ancestors, who may have participated. So it's really interesting to delve into it.
This idea behind where we are now and the shaping and molding of our future, do you feel that you, as you look around, you see this layer of history that we're developing now that clearly in 50, 100 years from now, people will look back at somewhat of amazement of how we have interacted, as we have socially not only improved and some areas self-destructed? Is that going to be a historical piece you're comfortable with being part of?
Well, I do think that given like our museum, when we have folks that come through, I think the changes are happening so fast and we're seeing them so fast in our own lifetimes. Okay. I'll give you an example. One of our buildings is the Grange Museum, which is farm tools and farm implements. And one of the displays is, tobacco barns and, we got, the pallets and the tobacco sticks and lots of twine and photos. And, there's people have no concept of that today. And sometimes I have to explain to them how that works and how they store tobacco in a barn for curing it.
Absolutely.
Okay. And, it's just foreign. And, you and I grew up with it.
Absolutely.
Sometimes had to do some cropping,
a lot of us participated in it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So, you're talking about looking back, I mean, it doesn't take, things have changed so fast. It just doesn't take long to go back and look at it and see just in our lifetimes. And so going by the museum, that's one thing that happens quickly.
Well, I encourage people to call you. We'll put the number of the museum up on the screen. I want to thank you for taking time to sit down and having this conversation today and helping us carry forward and better understand where we came from, how we got here, and the importance of knowing that about where we're going. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back next week right here. We look forward to seeing you again next week on We Should Know. Again, may God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.